Algebra 2, first hour. This is for Tuesday the 5th. And yesterday on Monday we started looking at something called a matrice, not the movie. The data, the way to organize data into a little different looking format. That's basically all it is. And we looked at, rows and columns. And just a quick reminder here. Remember, your rows go left to right. So that's row 1 and row 2 in this matrice. And your columns go north and south, up and down, like the columns of a building. So that's column 1 and column 2. So we would say that matrice has a dimension or an order of 2 by 2. And the second matrice also has a dimension of 2 by 2. Okay. Now today we're going to look at simply adding and subtracting. Whenever you add and subtract, this is important. These two have to be the same size, the same dimension. Okay, both of them are 2 by 2, 2 by 2s. Now what that tells me is my answer will be a 2 by 2. Then you got to kind of remember some geometry. If you remember, let me go over here. I'll go up top up here. In geometry, whenever you had triangles, say you had triangle ABC and you had triangle XYZ. And if we were told that those are congruent, you remember what congruent means? That means they're exactly the same size and shape. Exactly the same size and shape. These are both 2 by 2s. They're exactly the same size and they're exactly the same shape. Or they're exactly the same size and they're exactly the same thing. They're both matrices. Up here they were both triangles. Then remember, if they were congruent, what did that tell you? Well, you could pair up these, what was called corresponding pieces, and you could say, well, that means angle A and angle X are the same thing. And B and Y, we could pair those up. B and Y are the same thing. And C and Z are the same thing. So you paired up these corresponding pieces. And since the triangles were equal to each other, then those corresponding pieces were equal to each other. Well, down here in our matrices, we're going to pair up those corresponding pieces. So let me clean off some of my scratch work here. So in other words, this 5 is, remember how we would say that, that's in the 1, 1 position. Well, so is this negative 2. It's in the 1, 1 position. What are we going to do with those two? We're going to add them. And we say 5 plus negative 2, that's 3. What do we do with that 3? Put it in the 1, 1 position of our answer. Okay. Then we just continue on like that. Here, let me switch colors. So then this 6 is in the first row, second column. That 3 over there is in the same spot, first row, second column. So what do we do with those two? We add them and we say 6 plus 3 gives me a 9. Then we'll do the same thing on the bottom row. We would say negative 3 plus 0 equals negative 3. 1 plus 5 equals 6. And that's all there is to it. Just adding those corresponding parts together. Okay, so that's addition. Don't make it any more complicated than that. If your matrices are bigger, smaller, whatever, just remember they have to be the same dimensions in order to add them in the first place. Okay, so if one is a 2 by 2 and the other one is a 3 by 3, guess what? You cannot add them. Okay, so that's a little different. Usually, you take any two numbers that you can always add them together, but not with matrices. They have to be the same dimension. Now, when you subtract, you can attack it the same way. Again, first things first, that's a 2 by 2. This is a 2 by 2. So our answer is going to be a 2 by 2. Again, if this was 3 by 3, this one would have to be a 3 by 3, and it would produce an answer of 3 by 3. That's the way that works. Now, when you subtract, we can just go in and do the same thing we just did, pair up our corresponding elements, and do what it tells us, subtract. Now, when you subtract, you got to remember, you got to be a little more careful with subtraction over addition. If you have a double sign like this one does, we're going to have to add and say 3 plus 2 and get a 5 right there. Next spots, negative 2 and 4. We would say negative 2 minus 4. Remember what you can do with the minus? You can make it plus a negative. That would give me a negative 6 right there. So be careful when there's negatives involved and you're subtracting. Down here underneath, we would say 5. Well, what do I do with those two? I got to do 5 minus -1. So don't forget you got to subtract them. So we got a double negative. It means we would do 5 plus 1. We get a 6 right there. And the last one, the 0 and the 6, would be 0 minus 6, or plus a -6. We get an answer of -6 right there. So here is our answer. 5, -6 in the first row, 6, -6 in the second row. Now, one thing you can do whenever you subtract, clear this off. One thing you can do when you subtract is remember, if you're subtracting, say, 3 minus 5, you can turn this into an addition problem if you change this from +5 to -5. And maybe you're just better at doing it, at adding every single time. And this way, one thing that's good about this way is you can see that the negative is more bigger. So my answer would be a negative. So we can do the same thing here. We can change this to an addition problem. But just like over here, when we took this 5 and we made it negative, we'd have to change every one of these signs, just like we multiplied every one of them by a -1. And then, let me put this first one back in here. Then you can simply add them. You could say 3 plus 2, there's my 5. -2 and -4, maybe it's easier to see that you get -6 out of that. 5 and 1 gives me that +6. 0 plus -6, maybe it's easier for you to see you get a -6. So that is another option for you when you subtract. You can turn it into an addition problem, but you got to go in here and change all of these signs, which is not much to it, just a matter of rewriting it. Okay? Another short video today. That's it for today, just adding and subtracting. And tomorrow it won't be a long one either. It'll be a short one on a certain type of multiplication with these two. So your homework for today is short also, so continue to get those done and post your pictures, and we'll talk to you later.